welcome to the video. So in this video we will do the hands-on coding for Fanout Exchange. I'll take you through the current setup. So this is our UI where we access Rabbit MQ. We need this UI and we need our postman, and we'll start the Spring Boot application from the scratch. Okay, so you can see here, so I'm using Spring Initializer. I'll use Fanout project. Okay, so I'm using GTK 11. Okay, now move to next. I'll be using Lombok. Okay, then web. I'll be using the REST APIs, then Rabbit MQ. Okay, these three are enough. Move to create, and this is project start. We'll start with our classes. Okay, I'll just assign the JDK 11. Okay, now for this we need an entity class. I'll call it as message.java. Okay, now along with that, first we'll use a config class. Okay, config.java for all the configurations. Okay, now we'll need to start now we need to write one controller. We'll name it as message controller Java. Okay, and we'll use a class called consumer, which will consume our messages. Okay, so we have our model class, we have our configuration class, we have our controller, and we have our consumer class. Okay, so I think these many classes are enough. Let's start with the configuration. Okay, we'll use public class, config. Okay, since it's a configuration, I'll mark it as @configuration. Okay, now we'll add the package statement over here. Okay, now first, if you see the example over here, so here what we need, we have different components, right? We have our producers, exchange, queues, and consumers. So to create the whole end-to-end flow, we need all these components. So let's start with the queues. I'll create two queues in this. Okay, one is electronics and one is garments. Okay, we'll use public queue. We need to create AMQP core queue. Okay, I will use TRONICS electronics queue. Okay, return new queue, and we'll name it as capital A, TRONICS electronics. Okay, I will mark it as a Spring Bean. Okay, sorry. Now we copy it, we create one more queue called garments. Okay, I'll just rename it as GARMENTS garments queue. So now we have our queue ready. This is ready. Now we'll create our exchange. Now this is a Fanout exchange, right? So we will Fanout exchange, just name it exchange, and we'll return new Fanout exchange, and the exchange name, we'll name it as Fanout exchange. Okay, now we have these two components ready. Now you see that these queues are associated with this exchange, right? We need to create this binding. Now to create this binding, what we need to do, we use binder for that. So the the return type of it will be a binding. Okay, and we'll just name it as binding. It will take two things, right? For binding it needs an exchange and a queue, right? So we'll name it as a queue. Sorry. So yes, electronics queue. Okay, and Fanout exchange, right? So how to do? We need to return. We'll use binding builder dot bind. Queue is our electronics queue. Now to exchange. So whatever you're passing. So if you see here, there is no routing key concept or anything, right? We just need to bind these two queues. These two stuff, exchange and the queues, right? So this is one binding. So this is like we have binded the electronics queue with the exchange. Now we need to buy garments with an exchange, right? So we just copy everything. We'll just name it as garments queue. You can name it binding 1. Okay. Now we need to mark everything as spring bean so that it will be available in the class path. Okay. Now we will use the message converter, right? So use public message will return a custom message converter. We'll just name it as converter, and it will return new of Jackson to JSON message converter. Okay. Now we'll mark this also as spring bean. Now to use this converter in our AMQP template, what we need to do, we need to register this, right? So it will take an argument of connection factory. You can just use the given one. Now we'll use the rapid template equal to new rapid template, and it will take connection factory as a parameter, right? Now rapid template dot set message converter. So this is the converter what we're having right now. We will return the rapid template. This is done. So we have registered our converter as well. We'll mark this also as spring bean. So our configuration is done. So this part we have created. Now we need producer and a consumers. Let's start. Click on our consumer. Before that we need a message, right? As a message is also a component. So to create a message we need to use we need a model. Okay, now we'll have private field string routing key. Since it's a generalized class, so I am just keeping a routing key over here. In Fanout exchange we don't need it, so we either can pass null or empty string since it's a empty. Now we need to create this custom class, custom message class. Okay, we'll have to field string text private integer. Just have as quantity. Now to have constructors and setters and getters, we can use @data. Now all are constructed. I'm using Lombok for this. Okay, so it reduces all your boilerplate code. So we can use the same thing for this class as well. Okay, now come to our controller. Same, we'll use message controller. We need to set the package. Okay, now it's a REST controller. We need to add the REST controller annotation for. We need to add @request mapping. Okay, I'll just give it a slash message. Now we need to create a post mapping, because we need to pass our message body. Okay, so we'll just send the string in return. Okay, a success message. Just create a method called get data. We need to pass a request body, right? It will be of type message, right? So this is the message. Okay, now to send the message we need help of RabbitMQ rabbit template. I just inject it. We have already made it as a bean, so Spring will inject this for us. Now we'll use rabbit template. Now we have our message ready, we have our producer ready, but we need to send the message to Fanout Exchange, right? So how do we send? We'll just use convert and send. Okay, can use which takes an exchange, a routing key and a message. We can use this. Okay, so from the message we can take get exchange message dot get routing key and message dot get message. Okay, now since we need process, or we will just send it and forget, we need to return something. Let's success. We can just return the success. Okay, now our producer is ready. So we'll do the consumer later. Okay, we'll just create the class as it is, but we're not going to use it right now. Okay, let's try it out whether till now whatever we have done it's working fine or not. So our application is ready. Okay, let's go to our postman. Okay, now we have this as routing key. Okay, we are using this model over here, this message, and here we have message, text and quantity, right? So everything we don't have any routing key in this concept, so we are not giving it, and we are just using Fanout Exchange and everything. Okay, now we send the data, we got the success, right? So here it is, everything is fine. Okay, now so we have sent it. Now let's go to RabbitMQ. Now if you see here, we got this Fanout Exchange over here, right? It has been created. Now in the queues we have these two. Okay, now if you see, we have sent the message, but both the queues got the message, right? Since it's a Fanout Exchange, so this queue is also getting the message. And if you go to garments, get message, this also got the message. Okay, so our producing part is also working fine. Let's purge the message so that if we get we'll use the next message, it will show the proper way. Okay, now both the queues has been purged. Now we need to create our consumers, right? So consumer can be any other, if you go to this diagram, so consumer can be any other application. Okay, so in this case I'm just using another class. It can be any other application. Okay, we'll just use public void consume, and it takes the message. Since we are sending the message from our publisher or the producer, right, we are sending the message, so it will consume the message. Okay, now I'll just print the message like I got a fan out message. Okay, and then the next line I'll print the message. Okay, now we use at the rate, we need to use one annotation, just one annotation, to make it as a listener. So it takes the annotation as a Revit listener, and you need to pass the queue. I've told you, right? So this consumer will always be associated with the queues and none else. Okay, so we need to create that binding. So queues is equal to ECTRONICS electronics. Okay, now this is one listener. I'll create 3 listeners. Okay, message 1, you can just make it as 2, and this is, let's restart the application. Okay, let's clear the output console. So I have made a change over here. So so instead of message it should be custom message. It was an issue because here, if you see, we have this routing and exchange. This is part of the information of this message, but main message we are sending in the controller as only custom message, right? So we will be receiving only the custom message from the consumer. Okay, so this type I have changed. Now let's start the application. Let's clear the console, and now we go to Postman. We'll use this 500. Okay, now we got the success. You see here why we are seeing only 2 messages even though we have 3 queues, because we are getting 3 because we're using a garbage exchange. Since we have 2 electronics exchange, the first one already get the message, so there is no message left in the queue to consume for consumer 2. Okay, so that's why we are seeing only 2 messages. So this was a simple Fanout exchange. I'll I'll see you in the next video where we'll discuss about the topic exchange. Thank you.